One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996.
Greetings, this is Tai Brown and welcome to One Question. Our guest today is Glenn Wong. Glenn is the Executive Director of Sports Law and Business Program at the Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law at Arizona State University. Thanks for joining us, Glenn.
Good morning, Tai. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, Glenn, if I have this right, you spent 40 years in sports and law, studying and practicing and teaching young professionals about the career in sports. So that means you have a pretty good pulse of what has happened in the past and how the past has led us to where we are now and possibly what can happen in the future. Can you give us your thoughts on the overview of what we'll see in terms of law and sports?
Well, you're right, Ty. I've been in this for quite a while. In fact, when I was hired in 1979 at the University of Massachusetts, I was the first professor to teach a sports law course in a sport management program. And in the early parts of my career studying sports law, I could say that I had read everything written about every case and every article. And there's no way now that I can keep up with everything that's gone on. In fact, I probably would not have done well in the prediction business because I did not have any idea that the industry would grow as quickly as it has and to the breadth and depth of the issues that have come up in the last 40 years. And what's interesting is that even in the last, I would say, month, the number of issues and cases have spiked with some new and unique cases, which I'll mention to you in a minute. But tell you a story. One of my master's degree students at Arizona State University finished his program and is thinking about law school, and will in fact be applying to law school in the fall. And he wants to practice sports law. And after the FBI broke its case and Betsy DeVos announced some changes in Title IX, I said to him, well, I think your career in sports law is guaranteed. I think there's probably been a 25% increase in the amount of work that's needed to cover all of these new issues in addition to everything else that's going on.
It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
It is amazing, and it continues to be a growth industry. Unfortunately, there's not a stock or a stock index that you can buy in terms of sports law.
Long-term investment or something like that. Exactly. So you mentioned some of the recent events, and I would imagine that this will be in your curriculum soon, or at least in the next year or two as things develop. Is this something that you could have seen 10 years ago, or how does this affect things in terms of law and sports?
Some of it's to be determined because you don't know. For some of these cases, I don't think anybody knows exactly what the fallout's going to be and what the shakeout's going to be. I think it does reemphasize the importance of the graduate education, and I think we're particularly well placed at Arizona State University because we are emphasizing both the business and the law issues, and that is certainly a direction of some of the litigation that's going on. And I know it's debatable, whether, how much of college athletics is a business, but certainly there are large dollars involved and they're being run like businesses. So people with that kind of preparation become more and more desired by those athletic departments and companies.
Now, in terms of law and in terms of way our nation works, something goes into a court case, a precedent is set, and people adjust to what the new direction is. Thinking about like Title IX, or I guess, are there any other big cases or big cases you studied or that you have your students study that led to major changes in college sports outside of Title IX? We know that's a major one. Obviously, this is an anniversary year for it, but are there any cases outside of Title IX that you guys study?
Well, if you look at the history of professional sports, the major changes in professional sports was either done through legislation or litigation. The litigation was primarily antitrust law.
Okay.
So now taking that and applying it to college athletics, the antitrust cases then have the potential to make major changes in the structure of the organization.
Right.
And we're going through that test period right now with a number of cases, and I'm sure your listeners know the O'Bannon versus NCAA case was an antitrust case, and one of the cases that I think people are following in this industry is the Jenkins versus NCAA case, also known as the Kessler case, named after the lead attorney, Jeffrey Kessler, in that case. It's also referred to as the Grant and Aid case. So that's still in litigation. They're in the discovery process, but those have some, potential for making a major structural change if the plaintiffs are successful.
Is there anything underlying that the public may not see? Sometimes there are things that are in the public, but as a public, you get distracted by what's in the media. Is there anything underlying that we may not see as the public that may be something significant down the line?
One of the situations that I know is under the radar for the most part is University of Michigan has a deal with Amazon Prime to put a documentary series together, and they're in the process of filming it this fall to be shown in the spring. So that is something that I think is under the radar, but it has certain implications because addressed in the contract are issues like the name, image, and likeness of the student athletes, so you have some of the legal issues involved. In addition to that, you have the business issues. You have the business issues from the perspective of Amazon and whether that's a good way by using sports to increase its following and usage of Amazon Prime. And it's also interesting, I think, in terms of Michigan making a decision to do that, I imagine as some way to separate or differentiate its brand from other college athletic departments.
And so there can be some ramifications. Actually, everything is moving at one time regarding that in terms of the student athlete name and likeness. In terms of that can be interesting, right? Well, this has been great. Is there any other question I've neglected to ask you regarding sports and law and the future of it?
I'll just mention a couple of the other cases that I think your listeners might be following. We mentioned the FBI cases, and there's a whole range there in terms of the criminal activity, but there's also the potential of civil cases. There's also later on down the road the possibility of NCAA investigations, and as already happened out there, there could be employment considerations in terms of termination or attempted termination of coaches or assistant coaches. So there's a lot there. I think it's also a very interesting time in terms of the NCAA enforcement and infractions. I think the North Carolina academic case decision should be coming down in the next month or so. Louisville appealed their Committee on Infractions decision to the Infractions Appellate Committee, and the Mississippi case involving head coach Hugh Freeze, former head coach Hugh Freeze, has not gone to a hearing yet. So all three of those are in the process. I would also mention that there is a lawsuit brought by former Ohio State linebacker Spielman against Ohio State University, and that's an interesting one because not only has Ohio State University been sued, but also IMG, and it has to do with the fact that Spielman and several other former Ohio State University football players, their name, image, and likeness is on posters or flags, which also have a commercial sponsor, which is Honda. That is a different angle for a name, image, and likeness case, but that's out there also. So there are, a number of other things. There's a half a dozen other cases that I'm following, but it is busy and remains to be challenging and difficult to keep up with them all. I can't say that I've read everything now. I'm struggling to keep up with things.
Well, I would venture to say that you'll never run out of material for the students you teach and actually your practice. And
Right.
the people who are in your classes are lucky to be there because they constantly have current information. And as I said in the beginning, they can see how things in the past led to where we are now and the possibility of how where we are now could affect the future.
Yeah. The very best teaching tool is to have these cases occurring during the semester.
Oh, yeah.
Because the students have a great interest in it, they latch onto it. And actually, it's really an interesting teaching technique to ask them to predict the outcome of the cases.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'll get an email from a student several years later to say, hey, you know, I had that case predicted right.
Right on, right.
So what does all this mean? Mm-hmm. You know, one of the things that I have thought might happen in college athletics is an increase in the number of attorneys who are in athletic departments. So I'm looking at all this saying, well, you know, is there going to be more deregulation? Is there going to be more that needs to be done in terms of the student-athlete administration relationship? Will student-athletes at some point be allowed to have agents while they're eligible? And if they do, are there people that have to oversee that relationship? Because there'll be rules affecting that relationship. So I'm wondering if all of this might increase the possibility that we will see more athletic departments have people who are general counsel, so to speak, in athletic departments. And it's been interesting because over the last 10 or 15 years, there are a number of athletic departments that have done that. They have someone in-house, and sometimes it's just to deal with contracts, sometimes it's to deal with legal issues, sometimes it's to oversee compliance. So there's a whole different range of uses of lawyers in athletic departments, and one of the things that I'll be tracking and following is to see if that increases in the future.
Oh, yeah. Right. Well, I'm sure it makes for creating a syllabus for class interesting, and class discussions are probably always interesting. We appreciate your time being on with us today on One Question, Glenn.
Yep, my pleasure, Ty.
That was Glenn Wong. Glenn is the Executive Director of Sports Law and Business Program at the Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law at Arizona State University. And this is Tai Brown, signing off.
And that's today's One Question, brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. One Question is designed to give D1 Ticker subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences. One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996.